They sympathize with a racist.
You see, down here in the South, they have something that's called, I'm not going to say the whole word, but there's something that's called your ninja wake up call. See, you just got your ninja wake up call. That's all it is. Dry your eyes. You're going to be okay. But let this be a lesson to you. You know, you live and you learn. See, one thing I learned is you will never be on the same level, with their friends, or with their people. You see, you just a constituent. You're not really part of the family. You just, like a pet to them. You see, because it happened to me, you know. When you get into it with their friends or family members and it's not even your fault, who do you think they gonna ride with? They're not riding with you, bro. They're not gonna ride with you. Especially you the only one at the show. You the only one at the party. They not riding with you. You see, they gonna ride with their friends. You saw it with Colin Kaepernick. You saw how divided, the nation was over that. Colin Kaepernick taking the knee during the national anthem. You know, you thought y'all saw it back then how your friends, their perception was totally different from what you saw. You see, you understood why Colin was taking the knee, but they didn't understand it. They didn't want to understand it. They were hurling all kind of racial words. They didn't care if you knew about it or not. They were on their Facebook pages making comments, and some black people saw what their white friends were posting, you know, and they still didn't learn back then. We are not the same people. They ride with their people, and we have to learn that, that's how it is. It's time for us to grow up and put our big boy pants on. You see? See, some of us are still we still in a delusional state because, oh, they adopted me. They raised me from a little baby, or, they let me stay and they rent a house because my house got flooded. They gave me a free car so I can go to work and earn money. They even gave me a nice job. When I didn't have a job, nobody else would hire me. They gave me a job, my Christian friends, you see. But when it comes down to it, you know, we are not the same people because, they voted for Trump. They sympathize, like this brother here said, they sympathizing with, someone who was a known racist openly. He was an open racist. And they gonna side with him. They not siding with you. You see, we are not the same people. So just because they give you a job, just because they gave you a house to stay in rent free for a whole year, you were just a pet project for them. You was just a tax write off. You see, it didn't have anything to do with how much they care about you. You know, you was just a tax write off. When you checked that box to get that job and you checked African American, that was a tax write off for them. You see? So don't ever think that, these people are going to ride and die for me, all the way to the end. You see, when you go to the book of Genesis, chapter 25, verse 25, it'll tell you. Actually, read up a little bit further. Rebecca said, these two are fighting each other in my womb, Lord. Why is it so? You know, what was his response? He said, these are two different people These are two different nations in your womb, and one is going to be stronger than the other, and the elder will serve the youngest. You see? So we are not the same. From the very beginning, we were struggling with one another. So, yeah, this was your ninja wake up call. Shalom.